Just when you think the 2024 New York Mets are dead, oh my God.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use the code, all in lowercase, LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. The New York Mets showed an unbelievable amount of fight on Thursday to beat the Arizona Diamondbacks in this series. What a game. And a team effort. That's the best way to describe it. Everybody chipped in their own way to put the Mets over the top to win this one. It showed an incredible amount of resilience. And yes, you can now play revisionist history and say, oh, well, the Mets should have swept this series. But you never know what would have happened. If the Mets won the first two games, maybe they have a letdown on Thursday. You really don't know. But instead, you had a team that faced some really good pitching. Ryan Nelson was on. They faced the best of the Diamondbacks bullpen, but they did just enough to put 3 runs on the board, and they held the Diamondbacks to 2 and got the victory. I want to start in the middle of the game because I think the at-bat that really symbolizes this team in this fight came from their leader. That was in the 6th inning. Francisco Lindor had 2 pretty ugly at-bats against Ryan Nelson at the start of the game, struck out both times. He comes up in a spot where the Mets are losing by a score of 2-1. Pete Alonso homered in the 2nd inning, 29th of the season. He passed Mike Piazza for 3rd on the all-time list for the Mets. Bottom of the 3rd inning, Randall Grichuk hits a 2-run shot to put the Diamondbacks up. David Peterson keeps it there, so Lindor comes up with a chance to tie the game to lead off the 6th inning. But again, he had not had a good at-bat up to that point, and he still looked uncomfortable. But he said after the game, I went into that bat knowing I just had to get the job done, and he grinded his way through it, gets to a full count, fouls off 4 pitches, just hanging in there. And then he gets a hanger, a changeup up and in, did not miss it, crushed it, and let it all out when it comes to his emotions rounding those bases to MVP chance because he deserves them. Those are the moments where Francisco Lindor has come through, and it's not just your ordinary game-tying home run. When you look at the 24 hours from before that, when you blow a game the way the Mets did, feeling like your season is on the edge. I put a poll up on YouTube yesterday to our listeners asking if they thought that the season was over, essentially. Did the Mets still have a chance to make the playoffs? I believe they came back like 60, and there was 3 options. It was, they still have a chance, maybe if they made some changes, and then the other answer was, no, it's too late. I think 60% of the audience, when the last I checked, said it's too late. I mean, fans were ready to give up on this season, but this club's not. And they've earned us being tuned in all the way down the stretch with the way that they're playing these games, the grit that they're showing. And that was an incredible home run from Lindor to tie it up. And also, you have to acknowledge the real kind of quiet MVP of the game, which is David Peterson, because he got the Mets through 7 innings, which they desperately needed because you can't trust that bullpen right now. But Peterson was locked in. He still gave up 7 hits. He walked 2. There was a lot of traffic on the bases, but he did everything he could to limit the damage. He picked off 2 guys with that great, quick move where he picks off his back foot and the quick throw over the snap throw. That was, a huge benefit for him to get out of some of those innings using the pickoff. Before the game, one of the insiders, and that's our texting service, the Lock the Mets insiders, one of them asked me, why isn't Mark Vientos playing today? And I said, I think the idea is to put the best defensive infield behind David Peterson in hopes of, getting some quick innings and, getting through that game where he could pitch as much as possible and get deep in the game. And we saw Iglesias making some really nice plays over at third base. Francisco Lindor, an incredible play in the hole where he gets the force out at second. Just, again, solid across the board. And you end up in one of those games that I didn't want to see the Mets in. If you were listening to the show earlier this week, I said you don't want to see the Mets in these close games in late inning situations because the Diamondbacks thrive there, especially at home. We saw that on Wednesday. But here they were again. You got to find a way to win this game. The Mets did that. Jose Butto is pretty solid in the eighth, gets the first two guys out. Then he walks Jock Peterson. And I honestly thought it was a good walk. You know, it was good to sort of throw a tough pitch out of the zone. And if he takes it, he takes it. You don't want to give him something to hit. And then Jock Peterson runs into an out for the Mets, trying to steal on a 3-1 count. And so that was a very fortunate break for the Mets. I'm just forgetting as I'm looking through my notes here. Shout out to the seventh inning with David Peterson, where he made a huge pitch. In that inning, gives up two hits, one a well-struck single, one a soft ground ball to Jeff McNeil off the bat of Corbin Carroll, where he can't get Carroll out at first because he's too quick. So he tries to shovel it to Lindor, but Eugenio Suarez doesn't slide into second. So the ball goes into the outfield. Suarez ends up on third base. You got runners at first and third, one out, game hanging in the balance. And Peterson gets the ground ball to Jose Iglesias to McNeil for the 5-4-3 double play. That was another huge turning point. Eighth inning again, Butto gets out of it thanks to Jock Peterson's bad base running. And the Mets have a chance there in the top of the ninth to get a lead for Edwin Diaz. And they get the job done. Jesse Winker has a great at-bat after Pete Alonso strikes out to lead off the inning. Winker spits on some tough pitches, gets into a 3-1 count. This is off of the Diamondbacks' new closer, Justin Martinez, who's just been lights out for them, guy who throws 102 miles per hour at times. We saw that in this game. Jesse Winker is sitting fastball in a 3-1 count. He gets the fastball to the sinker, hits it into left center field for a double to get you a runner in scoring position. Tyrone Taylor comes on to run. He advances to third on a sac fly by JD Martinez, but now you got two outs, runner 90 feet away. Jose Iglesias comes up. He thrives in those situations, two outs, runners in scoring position. And once again, he delivers, rips one up the middle. Geraldo Perdomo can't make the play, hits off his glove, goes into the outfield. The Mets take a 3-2 lead. Then Edwin Diaz looked lights out in the ninth. So credit to Edwin for flushing it. He talked about a mechanical change that his arm was sort of dragging behind. They worked on that, and he, to come through home plate a little bit more. And he looked like Edwin Diaz again, strikes out the first two batters, gets a pop out, and the Mets hang on to win this series. Just a really impressive effort, top to bottom. I can't say enough about how much a win like this should endear you to this club. And again, should keep you locked into everything from the Mets this final month. We're not going to have baseball for a long time after this month. Hopefully we will get some in October, but I'm hanging on to every single one of these games like it is October, because this team is playing with their backs against the wall every single night, and some special stuff is happening. So credit to the Mets for finding a way to win this series. And now they got a great opportunity this weekend to play what has historically been one of the worst teams in MLB history while the Braves play the Phillies. I want to tell you what happened in the first game of their 4-game set, and then preview Mets versus White Sox in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Liquid IV. Get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the #1 powdered hydration brand in America, Liquid IV. What I love about Liquid IV, first and foremost, is the taste. I love my strawberry and lemonade, but it's also the convenience. You just tear open a pouch, pour it into 16 ounces of water, and you will get better hydration. When I come back from a run, I'm going to Liquid IV because I recover so much quicker. Powered by Live Hydroscience. It's an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. If you're an everyday listener, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service. You get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways, and you get the starting lineup graphic sent to your phone each day, so you know it's going to be the starting nine without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. And after the Mets beat the Diamondbacks, I was fired up. I'm like, you know what? Let's watch some more baseball. Turned on Braves, Phillies, and let's see what happens. Orlando Arcia hit an RBI double. I can't remember if it was the first inning. I think it probably was the first inning. It had to be. First or the second inning. And I was out. I as soon as I saw the Braves scored a run, I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not going to let this ruin my night. I'm having a good night. The Mets won. I'm just going to turn it off. And I'm glad I did because the Braves jumped out to a 4-0 lead in that game. Luckily, the Phillies came back and beat them. Charlie Morton put up 5 zeros, and then Brandon March got him for a 3-run homer in the 6th inning. 7th inning, Nick Castellanos hit a 2-run shot, and the Phillies found their way to a victory. On the season, the Braves had actually won 6 of their first 9 games against the Phillies, and they entered this series only down in the division by 5 games. Well, now, 6-game lead for the Phillies, and if they sweep this series, just saying, they win the season series, which would pretty much clinch the division. If they swept the Braves and put them away and got the season series, it'd pretty much be all wrapped. I don't think that's going to happen, but this is a weekend where the Mets are playing the worst team in baseball, and the Braves are playing one of the best. So if there's ever a weekend for the Mets to eat into that 4-game lead, this is the weekend to do it, and you got to handle your side of the fence. Win every game. I hate to put those must-sweep declarations because they never end well, so I apologize. I knock on wood. I'll cross my fingers. I'll do everything, but we're all thinking it. This is a White Sox team that is 31-104. Let me say that again for the people in the back. 31-104. 73 games under 500. It's a bad baseball team. There's no excuses. We could go into, is their bullpen good? I'm not doing that today. It's a team that's 73 games under 500. I don't care. Beat them. Beat them. Toughest test might be the first game because Tyler McGill's on the mound, but this is a start where McGill needs to step up. They've said it since spring training. To get to 162 plus, which was Carlos Mendoza's tagline for the season, we want to play 162 plus, right? It's going to take, they said, not just 26 guys, not just 30 guys. It's going to take the whole 40-man roster and guys who aren't on it. Tyler McGill is a member of this 40-man roster. He's had his moments this year. There was that great start he had against the Dodgers, but overall, it's been a disappointing year for him. This is your chance to make a big start when your team needs you against the team that you should be able to carve against. He struck out 11 in his last minor league start. You're going up against pretty much a minor league lineup. Now, there's still a couple of hitters that are dangerous. You still have some top prospects who are on the big league roster that are trying to make a name for themselves, and that makes a team like this frisky, a little bit scary. They fired their manager. They got Grady Sizemore as their new manager. Yeah, it's a team that could still sneak up on you, but largely it's a bad baseball team. You got to beat them. First game, Jonathan Cannon's going to go for the White Sox. He has a 4.57 ERA in the season, 63 Ks and 90 and 2/3 innings pitched. It's a rookie, but it's not one that the Mets should have any problems with. You got to score a bunch of runs. And again, just put yourself in a position to take advantage of any loss that the Braves might take this weekend against a really good Phillies team. This is a huge weekend for the Mets to get closer and closer in this race because they're going to have to play the Phillies at some point. This is going to get harder for the New York Mets. They have a stretch right now that's not easy. This weekend should be, but beyond that, the Red Sox are a good team whose pitching is starting to fail them, but they're still a good team. You got to beat that team. The Reds, sub 500 team. The Blue Jays are actually playing a little bit better. Still a sub 500 team. There's a stretch right now where you aren't playing the juggernauts. You're not playing the Phillies. Down the stretch, you're going to play the Phillies a lot. You're going to play the Braves. You're going to play the Brewers. It's going to be hard. You do have one more series against the Nationals mixed in there, but it's going to be tough. So you got to take advantage of this next 2-week period. This is going to be a time where the Mets can hopefully get themselves back in a playoff position or get right there. If they can do that and then they hold their own against those good teams. You never know what can happen. But this is also a stretch where if you don't go out and beat the White Sox in a series, you got to do that. But if you don't take advantage of this team, of the next couple series, it can get away from you quick. So hopefully the Mets continue to show that fight, show that grit. Game 2 is going to be Jose Quintana versus Davis Martin. Martin has a 2.96 ERA in, 6 games, 5 starts, career 4.27 ERA, but a 1.43 whip. I mean, these are not the top end pitching prospects for the White Sox. There's some guys that might come up in September, but it's not these guys. Sunday, you will have to face Garrett Crochet, so that is a tough test. If there was an excuse for a game the Mets could lose, it'd be that one. But you got Sean Manaea on the hill, and Crochet's on a pitch limit. So I don't think you're going to see much more than 4 innings of Garrett Crochet. And that White Sox team doesn't have a good bullpen. So the Mets got to do what they can to take advantage of a bad baseball team this weekend. And if they do that, and let's just say they do happen to win all 3 games, look at the road trip they put together if they can pull that off. What is that, a 7? Is that a 7-3 road trip? 2 losses to the Padres, 1 to the Diamondbacks. Not bad. You'll take 6-4 too, but this is a chance here for the Mets to gain some much needed ground, and hopefully they do it. Hopefully they can get the job done, because that would leave us all with a much better taste in our mouth going into next week, as the Mets will return home for their second to last homestand of the season. Hopefully all of you pack out the ballpark for that one. We're going to talk in the final segment here, though, about September call-ups, particularly on the pitcher side. I want to talk a little bit about Daniel Nunez. So he hit the IL again, so we'll go through that a little bit. And I'll go through the options on the 40-man roster to join this team in September, and also one name off of the 40, but in the organization. We'll go through all of that in just a minute. First, though, another quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. With over 5 million active members, Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because unlike other apps, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. So you can look at Tyler McGill's strikeouts against the White Sox. Maybe you want more on that. He's been striking out a lot of guys in the minor leagues. It's a minor league lineup. Maybe you take that. You can look at WNBA right now, and with the NFL season soon upon us, you can look at week 1 and say, oh, Tyreek Hill, is he going to get more than 90.5 yards? You could put that in an entry. And again, 2 to 6 player stat projections you combine into one entry, and you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks, where you can turn $10 into $1,000. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to receive, or you don't even need to win, to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports by checking out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. Daniel Nunez threw again and didn't go well. Arm is still tight. He has hit the injured list with forearm tightness. So this puts the Mets bullpen in a bad spot. You look at the back end now, you got Diaz, you got Jose Budo, you got Phil Maton, and then a lot of question marks. Reed Garrett has to step up. Adam Ottavino, Ryan Stanek maybe have to step up. Huascar Brazaban. The options get thin. You still have Danny Young as your left-handed pitcher in this pen right now, and I think he's going to stay for the rest of the season the way things are shaking out. But this team needs another option, and it's hard to find that option at the end of August. I talked about on yesterday's show, maybe it's Taylor Rogers. That's an opportunity that's going to present itself to the Mets on waivers. You can go back and listen to the 3rd segment of yesterday's show where I talk about it. But essentially, the Mets can claim this guy. They just have to pay the remainder of his $12 million in salary this year and $12 million next year, and they get him. And he could slot right into their bullpen. He's a left-handed pitcher with reverse splits. Got a low 2 ERA this year. I really hope they grab him. That makes the most sense. But I don't know if David Stearns wants to spend his resources. I mean, it's Steve Cohen's money, but still on a $12 million 34-year-old left-handed reliever. He's 33 now, but next year, 34. That's a big chunk for next season. Not that the Mets have to be constrained when you have Steve Cohen, but they do at some point want to dip below that luxury tax to reset the penalties. So I don't know. I don't know if they're going to grab him or if they want to stay internal. If they want to stay internal, is there an option that they can call on that could potentially be an impact reliever down the stretch? Let's talk about the guys in the 40-man roster. You got Alex Young, Tyler Zuber, Eric Orzy, and Matt Gage. Those are the four guys. There's Grant Hartwig, but he's hurt. So those are your options, right? Zuber was the reliever the Mets acquired from the Rays at the deadline, but he has not thrown the ball well. He's given up 4 runs in each of his last 2 appearances, so I doubt it's going to be him. Matt Gage, they picked up off of waivers from the Dodgers earlier this season. He hasn't done well lately in Syracuse, ERA of 9 over the last couple of weeks. Alex Young has pitched pretty well all year, had a 1 ERA with the Mets. I think it was 9 appearances, 2.81 ERA in AAA. He just pitched 2 scoreless innings today. Alex Young is probably the favorite. He's probably the leader in the clubhouse to take that spot, gives you a second lefty in the bullpen. I think that one makes a lot of sense. Beyond that, Eric Orzy has thrown the ball pretty well as of late, but didn't look good in his little cameo with the Mets this season. The guy I really want to talk about, though, is Shintaro Fujinami. Could Fuji all of a sudden, after an entire year where we didn't see him, come on his white horse and save this bullpen and be an 8th inning guy to Edwin Diaz? It is a huge stretch, and I had given up on the idea of Fuji doing anything for the Mets this year when he ended up getting DFA'd and getting outrighted back to AAA because the Mets needed to clear 40-man spot when Kodai Senga came back, if I'm not mistaken, if I had that timeline right in my head here. But Fujinami had a horrible start to the season. Absolutely atrocious. Goes on the IL, ends up coming back at the end of June. Since he has come back, Shintaro Fujinami has made 14 appearances. He's pitched 17 and 2/3 innings. He's got a 2.41 ERA. He has 23 strikeouts in those 17 and 2/3 innings pitched, 12 walks. 7 of those 12 walks came in 2 outings. He had 1 4-walk outing, 1 3-walk outing. And that is the worry, that you call him up and he falls back into that lack of control and he loses you a game. That's the problem with calling up Shintaro Fujinami, is you can't blow games at this stage of the season. You have to avoid it. And this guy is a massive risk to have some horrible outings. He just is. With that said, he has thrown the ball really well, and he throws over 100 miles per hour with a really good splitter. So we'll see. He's not on the 40-man roster, but the Mets right now have 39 on their 40-man roster, if I counted correctly, and they can easily make some room. They have both Grant Hartwig and Brett Beatty who are hurt for the season. They could always bring those guys up just to put them on the 60-day IL and clear some 40-man spots. So they have options to get Fuji onto the 40-man roster and then onto the active roster. So that's going to be an interesting one. Could Shintaro Fujinami be a September call-up? I think the interesting aspect of it, if I'm not mistaken, he would have to be on the 40 before September 1st to be eligible for the postseason. So, I mean, this is an any day now type of situation for the Mets. I think the same thing comes with the waiver claim. If they're going to claim Taylor Rogers, it's got to happen any day now. So we'll see who the Mets add to this bullpen. It's going to be very interesting which arm they go with. It could be the safe, easy bet, Alex Young. It could be the waiver claim, an expensive one, of Taylor Rogers. Or it could be adding Shintaro Fujinami to the roster. You paid him, over $3 million this season? Maybe he's the guy. I don't know. But the Mets are going to need some help. Daniel Nunez might not be available for the rest of the season. We really don't know. I hope he is. But there's no telling what's going to happen here. And forearm tightness, you don't want to run the risk of losing this guy for next season, because I think he could be a big part of the team in 2025. So it's going to be on some other guys to step up. Reed Garrett in particular has to step up. Maybe Brazaban has some better stretches in him. He certainly has the stuff. Adam Ottavino, Ryan Stanek, we'll see. But that's going to be the big question mark down the stretch. If there is a part of this team that's going to end up costing them, I still think it's the bullpen, even with a good game today, because today it was David Peterson, Jose Butto, and Edwin Diaz. wasn't any of those other guys we're talking about. So it's going to be something to monitor throughout the rest of the season. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's show. I will be back with a Saturday edition of Locked On Mets tomorrow, breaking down whatever happens on Friday night with Tyler McGill making his return to the rotation. We'll see how that goes. I will talk about that game, but I also will go through the Mets options on the position player side for the September call-up. There's a couple interesting ones in Drew Gilbert and Luis Angel Acuna. We'll talk about them all tomorrow. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. The goal is to get to 10,000 subs by the end of the season. Appreciate all of you who continue to hit that red button and subscribe. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen and your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel covering everything world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today with your local host from each team, league-wide host from each league. Locked On Sports Today is streaming 24/7 on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV.